The moment my daughter-in-law called me a worthless burden, I started recording. My name is Dr. Alan Johnson, and for 6 months, I've been listening to lies. This woman thought my grief made me stupid. She spoke Chinese around me, insulting me to my face, planning to steal my dead wife's money. $340,000 meant for my grandchildren's college fund. She called me confused, demented, a burden who needed to be locked away. What she didn't know, I understood every single word. You see, Monica made one critical mistake. She assumed tears meant weakness, that a widower couldn't count money, that Chinese insults were safe around an old American man. She was dead wrong. I've been recording everything, every conversation, every lie, every plan to destroy my family and steal from children. The bank statements don't lie. The audio evidence is devastating. And when I finally spoke back to her in fluent Mandarin, her whole world collapsed. If you're watching this story, hit that subscribe button. I want to know where my fellow justice seekers are watching from because this revenge was absolutely perfect. But let me start from the beginning because this story isn't just about language. It's about the most expensive lesson my family ever learned. My wife Shani died from cancer 6 months ago. Pancreatic, stage 4. The doctors gave her 3 months, but she fought for 8. That's the kind of woman she was, stubborn until the end. The grief hit me harder than I expected. 52 years of marriage doesn't just disappear. I'd catch myself setting 2 coffee cups in the morning, making enough dinner for 2, talking to her empty chair. Monica, my daughter-in-law, stepped in immediately. "Dad, you can't be living alone like this," she said. "Let me handle your appointments, your bills. You shouldn't be driving in your condition." My condition. Like grief was a medical diagnosis. The first red flag came at my doctor's appointment in April. Dr. Peterson was explaining my blood pressure medication when Monica interrupted. "He's been having memory issues," she told him. "Sometimes he forgets where he put things. Gets confused about dates." I stared at her. I'd never mentioned any memory problems because I didn't have any. But Dr. Peterson was already making notes. "We should run some cognitive assessments," he said, looking concerned. Monica smiled. "I think that's wise." The second incident happened at the bank in May. I went to withdraw some cash, just $200 for groceries and gas. The teller, a young woman named Sarah, seemed nervous. "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson," she said, "but your account shows that Monica Taylor has been designated as your financial representative. She's been handling your transactions." "My what?" "Your daughter-in-law filed paperwork indicating you needed assistance with banking due to cognitive decline." I felt my stomach drop. I never signed anything like that. Sarah showed me a stack of documents with my signature. Signatures that looked suspiciously shaky, like someone had practiced making them look uncertain. That evening, Monica came over with Chinese takeout from Golden Dragon. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, unpacking containers on my kitchen table. My son Richard was with her. Good kid, but he worked 60-hour weeks at the engineering firm and trusted his wife completely. "Dad," Richard said, "Monica told me about the bank situation. Maybe it's better this way. Less stress for you." "What bank situation?" Monica and Richard exchanged a look. "You were there this afternoon," Monica said gently. "You tried to withdraw money, but couldn't remember your PIN." I remembered my PIN perfectly. It was Shani's birthday, 03-15-48. But here's where things got interesting. Monica started speaking in Mandarin to someone on her phone. Her voice carried from the kitchen while I sat in the living room, pretending to watch television. "The old man is getting worse," she said in perfect Mandarin. "Today he couldn't even remember being at the bank. This is working better than I expected." I kept my face neutral, my eyes on the TV. She continued talking, walking back toward the dining room. "Richard believes everything I tell him. The inheritance money will be easy to access once I get power of attorney. The stupid American doesn't understand anything we're saying." She hung up and returned to the dining room with a bright smile. "That was my cousin in San Francisco. She was asking about you." "That's nice," I said. But I was already planning. That night, I went to Best Buy and bought a Sony ICD-PX70 digital recorder for $89.99. Small enough to fit in my shirt pocket. Good enough to record conversations clearly. Shani always said I was too trusting. "Alan," she'd tell me, "you see the best in people, even when they're showing you their worst." She was right. but 30 years of working as a medical interpreter teaches you one crucial skill: how to listen without being noticed. Monica made one critical mistake. She assumed grief made me helpless. What she didn't know was that I was about to become very methodical about proving her wrong. The next morning, I found Shaney's will in our bedroom safe. I'd avoided reading it since the funeral, too painful. But Monica's phone conversation changed everything. Shaney had been specific, very specific. To my beloved husband, Alan, the house, the 2019 Honda Civic, and my personal effects. To my son, Richard, my mother's jewelry for his future daughters. To my grandchildren, James and Emma Johnson, the life insurance proceeds of $340,000 to be held in trust for their college education. Then came the line that made my blood run cold. Under no circumstances should Monica Taylor have access to these funds or serve as trustee for the children's education accounts. Shaney never trusted Monica. She'd been polite about it, but I remembered conversations we'd had in private. "That woman sees dollar signs when she looks at our family," Shaney had said. "Promise me you'll protect the children's future." I'd promised, and I was failing. I drove to Bank of America that afternoon and requested account statements for the past 3 months. The young manager, Kevin, seemed uncomfortable. "Mr. Johnson, your daughter-in-law, Monica, has been handling these requests. She indicated you were having some cognitive difficulties. I want to see my own bank statements." Kevin hesitated, then printed the documents. What I saw made me sick. Monthly withdrawals of $2,800, labeled Specialized Dementia Care Services. Payments to something called Taylor Care Management, LLC, that I'd never heard of. A total of $16,800 in 3 months. I'd never received any dementia care. I'd never authorized these payments. And Taylor was Monica's maiden name. "Who authorized these withdrawals?" I asked Ed. Kevin pulled up the digital records. "Monica Taylor presented medical documentation indicating you were incapacitated and required care management. She had a power of attorney form signed by you. I want copies of everything." That evening, I called my old colleague from the hospital, Dr. Susan Roberts. She'd been the head of neurology at Phoenix General for 15 years. I trusted her completely. "Alan," she said when I explained the situation, "those symptoms Monica described, confusion, memory loss, inability to handle finances, those don't appear overnight. If you were developing dementia, there would be warning signs over months or years." Could grief cause confusion? Grief can cause depression, sleep problems, difficulty concentrating, but it doesn't cause the kind of cognitive decline Monica described to your bank. Someone with your education and professional background would still retain basic financial competency. Dr. Roberts agreed to evaluate me the following week. If someone is claiming you're incapacitated, we need medical evidence to the contrary. The appointment was scheduled for October 15th, but Monica had other plans. That Sunday, she arrived at my house with more Chinese takeout and a folder of documents. "Dad," she said, "I've been thinking about your situation. Living alone isn't safe anymore. I found a wonderful assisted living facility in Scottsdale. They have memory care specialists." She spread brochures across my kitchen table. Sunset Manor, Desert Springs Senior Care, places that cost $4,000 a month. "I can't afford that," I said. "That's where Shaney's life insurance comes in. We can use that money to ensure you get proper care." "That money is for the grandchildren." Monica's smile tightened slightly. "Dad, the children are 8 and 10 years old. They don't need college money right now. You need care now." Shaney's will was very clear. Wills can be contested, especially when the deceased person couldn't have anticipated your declining mental state. That's when she made her second mistake. She pulled out her phone and started speaking in Mandarin to someone. I kept eating my lo mein, acting confused by the foreign language. "The stubborn old fool is refusing to sign," she said. "But I have medical documentation now. The doctor wrote that he's showing signs of dementia. Once I get him into assisted living, the power of attorney will be easier to execute." She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "Yes, I already have access to most of his accounts. The life insurance just requires one more signature. Richard doesn't suspect anything. He thinks I'm being a devoted daughter-in-law." Another pause. $340,000, minus what I've already taken for his care. Enough to buy the house in Tempe we looked at. My hand stayed steady as I continued eating, but inside I was calculating. Monica wasn't just stealing money. She was planning to institutionalize me to cover her tracks. Shaney's worst fears were coming true, and I was the only one who could stop it. The recording device in my shirt pocket captured every word. The family dinner from hell happened 3 days later. Monica had organized it to discuss Dad's care options with the whole family. My son Richard, his kids James and Emma, Monica's parents who'd driven down from Flagstaff, and Monica's sister Claire, who'd flown in from Denver. They gathered in Richard's dining room like a medical tribunal. I sat at the head of the table, playing the confused patriarch, while my Sony recorder captured everything. "We're all here because we love Dad," Monica began, "but we need to face reality. His cognitive decline is accelerating." Richard nodded sadly. "The bank incident really shook me up. Dad couldn't remember his own PIN." "That's not true," I said quietly. Monica patted my hand condescendingly. "Dad, you were very confused. It's okay to admit when we need help." Claire, Monica's sister, looked concerned. "How bad is it?" "Yesterday he called me by Shaney's name," Monica lied smoothly. "He thought she was still alive. It was heartbreaking." The recording device captured my actual response. "I never called you Shaney. I wouldn't make that mistake." But Monica was already moving past my denial. "The doctors recommend supervised care, somewhere with memory specialists." That's when Monica's mother, Linda, started speaking in Mandarin. She'd been quiet all evening, but now she leaned toward Monica with concern in her voice. "Is the old man really this bad? He seems alert tonight." Monica responded in rapid Mandarin. "He has good days and bad days. Today is good, but tomorrow he might not remember any of us. The American doctors say it's normal for dementia patients." Linda glanced at me, then back to Monica. "Are you sure about this plan? Taking money from children feels wrong." "The money will still be used for family," Monica replied in Mandarin, "just differently than his dead wife planned. She was always jealous of me anyway. Now I can fix her mistakes." I kept my expression blank, occasionally nodding, as if following their English conversation about assisted living costs. Richard was looking at brochures. "Sunset Manor seems nice, but $4,000 a month? Even with Dad's Social Security, we'll need to tap into other funds." "That's what the life insurance is for," Monica said, switching back to English. "But Mom's will specifically designated that money for James and Emma's college." Monica's voice took on a sharp edge. "Richard, your mother wrote that will when your father was healthy. She couldn't have anticipated this situation." I spoke up. "She anticipated it perfectly." The table went quiet. Everyone stared at me. "Shani knew exactly what she was doing," I continued. "She protected that money for a reason." Monica's smile became strained. "Dad, you're having another confused episode. I'm not confused about my wife's intentions." That's when Monica made her third mistake. She turned to her mother and spoke angrily in Mandarin. "The stubborn old goat is fighting me on everything. I should have moved faster with the power of attorney." Linda looked uncomfortable. "Monica, maybe we should—" "No!" Monica snapped in Mandarin. "I've invested too much time in this plan. 3 months of playing nursemaid to this worthless American. He's going into assisted living, whether he likes it or not." Richard was watching the exchange with growing confusion. "What are you two discussing?" "Just family concerns," Monica said smoothly, but her sister Claire was frowning. Claire had married a Chinese-American man and understood basic Mandarin. "Monica, did you just call Dad worthless?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Of course not," Monica said quickly. "You misheard." "I didn't mishear. You called him a worthless American." Richard looked between his wife and his sister-in-law. "What exactly is going on here?" Monica's face flushed. "Claire's confused. Her Mandarin isn't very good." "My Mandarin is fine," Claire said coldly. "And you've been saying terrible things about Dad while he's sitting right here." That's when 8-year-old James, my grandson, piped up. "What's Mandarin?" "It's a Chinese language, sweetie," Claire explained. "Aunt Monica was speaking it because she thought Grandpa couldn't understand." "But Grandpa knows lots of languages," Emma said innocently. "He taught us to count in Chinese last Christmas. Remember? Yi, san, si, wu." The room went dead silent. Monica stared at Emma, then at me. "You... what?" Richard was looking confused. "Dad, you know Chinese?" Before I could answer, Monica stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Alan doesn't speak Chinese. Emma's just confused." Actually, I said quietly, Emma's pronunciation's excellent. I looked directly at Monica and continued in perfect Mandarin. And my hearing is better than you think. Monica's face went white. Her mother gasped. Claire's eyes widened. Richard looked back and forth between us. Dad, what just happened? Monica was backing toward the kitchen, her voice shaky. I need some air. Sit down, Monica, I said in English. Then I switched to Mandarin. We're not finished talking. She sat down hard, like her legs had given out. 30 years, I said to the room in English. 30 years I worked as a medical interpreter at Phoenix General Hospital. Mandarin, Cantonese, Taiwanese, Shanghainese. I helped Chinese families communicate with their doctors during the worst moments of their lives. I pulled out my phone and played back Monica's conversation from 3 minutes earlier. Her voice filled the dining room, speaking Mandarin about worthless Americans and stealing money from children. Would anyone like a translation? I asked. The aftermath of that dinner was brutal. Richard drove me home in stunned silence while Monica stayed behind to process everything. The kids were confused. Monica's family was mortified. The carefully constructed narrative of my incompetence had crumbled in 10 minutes. But Monica wasn't finished. People like her don't give up easily when money is involved. The next morning, she called Dr. Peterson's office and scheduled an emergency appointment for me. He had a psychotic episode last night, she told them. Paranoid delusions about recording conversations. He needs immediate evaluation. I found out because Dr. Peterson's nurse, Janet, called me directly. Mr. Johnson, your daughter-in-law says you're experiencing paranoid episodes. She wants us to assess your competency. Janet, do you remember me from my wife's cancer treatments? Of course. You were always so sharp, asking detailed questions about Shaney's care plan. Do I sound paranoid or confused to you right now? A pause. You sound exactly like yourself, Mr. Johnson. Then trust me when I say Monica has been lying about my mental state to access my late wife's inheritance money. Janet was quiet for a moment. Mr. Johnson, those are serious accusations. I have recordings. That afternoon, I drove to my old workplace. Phoenix General Hospital looked exactly the same. White concrete, blue glass, the smell of disinfectant, and hope. I'd spent 30 years walking these hallways, carrying my translation equipment between patient rooms. Security recognized me immediately. Dr. Johnson, how's retirement treating you? The title always made me smile. I wasn't a medical doctor, but after 3 decades of interpreting complex medical procedures, everyone called me doctor out of respect. I went to Human Resources and requested copies of my employment records. Maria Gonzalez, who'd worked there almost as long as I had, pulled my files. 30 years of service, she said, flipping through documents. Department of Interpretation Services, Mandarin Chinese Specialist. Excellent performance reviews every year until your retirement in March. Maria, I need you to verify something for me. If someone claimed I was mentally incompetent, would these records contradict that? She looked up sharply. Alan, what's going on? I explained the situation. Maria's expression grew darker with each detail. Let me print everything, she said. Employment history, performance evaluations, continuing education certificates. Anyone who worked with you knows your mind is sharp as a tack. That evening, I sat in Shani's favorite chair and organized my evidence. The employment records showed continuous high-level cognitive work until March 2024. The audio recordings proved Monica's deception. The bank statements documented financial theft. But I needed more. Monica was escalating, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd lived next door for 15 years. Helen, I need a favor. Monica's been telling people I'm developing dementia. Have you noticed any changes in my behavior since Shaney died? Oh, Alan, that's terrible. You've been sad naturally, but confused? Never. You still maintain your yard better than men half your age. You help me with my computer problems. Just last week you explained that complex Medicare supplement thing I couldn't understand. Would you be willing to document that? Absolutely. Next I called my financial advisor, Tom Bradley at Merrill Lynch. I'd worked with him for 20 years, setting up the kids' college funds and managing Shaney's life insurance policies. Tom, someone's been claiming I'm mentally incompetent. Have I seemed confused during our recent conversations? Not at all, Alan. You called last month asking detailed questions about the grandchildren's education trusts. You understood every aspect of the investment strategy. Your questions were more sophisticated than most of my clients. Can you document our recent interactions? Already on it. I'll email you a summary of our conversations from the past 6 months. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Shani's final weeks, how she'd gripped my hand and made me promise to protect the children's future. Monica's going to try something, she'd whispered. She looks at our family like a business opportunity. Shani had seen something I'd missed, or maybe I hadn't wanted to see it. I walked to our bedroom and opened Shani's jewelry box. Hidden under the velvet lining was a folded piece of paper, a note in her handwriting. Alan, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably doubting yourself. Don't. Trust your instincts about Monica. The children's money must be protected. You're stronger than you think. I love you. She'd known. Even while fighting cancer, she'd been planning for this exact situation. I folded the note and put it in my wallet, next to my hospital ID badge. Tomorrow, I'd need both, because Monica was about to learn that grief doesn't equal stupidity, and quiet men can be the most dangerous opponents of all. Monica's master stroke came exactly 1 week later. She organized what she called a family intervention at her house, inviting not just immediate family, but extended relatives, family friends, and most importantly, several people from the Chinese American community who'd been following our situation. We need witnesses, she told Richard on the phone. I was listening from my kitchen while she spoke in the living room. People need to see how confused he's become. It'll make the legal proceedings smoother. The guest list was strategic. Monica's parents, her sister Claire, Richard and the kids, family friend Pastor Williams from our church, Monica's cousin David, who worked in elder care, and 3 couples from the Chinese Cultural Association, who Monica had been cultivating as allies. She'd spent 2 weeks poisoning the well, telling everyone that I was having episodes and becoming increasingly paranoid about family finances. The intervention was designed to be my public breakdown, the moment where everyone would see that poor, confused Alan Johnson needed to be placed in professional care. I arrived at 2 p.m. on Sunday, October 27th, carrying a small gift bag. Monica had requested everyone bring something meaningful to share memories of the Alan we all love. The living room was arranged like a courtroom. Monica sat at the center, flanked by her parents and sister. Richard was off to the side with the kids, looking uncomfortable. The Chinese couple sat together on the sectional sofa, whispering in Mandarin. Pastor Williams opened with a prayer for wisdom and compassion during difficult family decisions. Then Monica took control. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "This isn't easy, but Alan needs more help than our family can provide. His cognitive decline has accelerated rapidly since Shani's death." She pulled out a folder of documents. "Medical reports show increasing confusion and memory loss. He's been making paranoid accusations about family members. Yesterday, he claimed I was stealing money from his accounts." Sympathetic murmurs from the audience. Monica's cousin David nodded knowingly. "Early-stage dementia often presents with financial paranoia," he said. "Patients become convinced that caregivers are exploiting them." "Exactly," Monica said. "Alan believes I'm somehow stealing from Shani's life insurance, even though that money is specifically designated for his care needs." Mrs. Chen, one of the Chinese Cultural Association members, spoke up in Mandarin. "The poor man seems so lost. It's good that you're taking responsibility for his welfare." Monica responded in Mandarin. "It's been challenging, but someone has to protect him from his own confusion. Americans often struggle with aging parents." I sat quietly in my designated chair, the concerned family patriarch letting the conversation flow around me. My Sony recorder was running in my shirt pocket, but today I had something better. Dr. Betrayal. Susan Roberts arrived at 2:30, right on schedule. Monica hadn't expected her. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Dr. Roberts said, "but Alan asked me to stop by to discuss his recent neurological evaluation." Monica's face tightened. I wasn't aware Alan had scheduled any additional tests. "Oh, yes," Dr. Roberts said, settling into a chair. "Comprehensive cognitive assessment, brain imaging, the full battery. I have the results." The room went quiet. Richard leaned forward. "What did you find?" Dr. Roberts opened her briefcase. "Alan's cognitive function is completely normal for his age. Excellent memory. Strong reasoning skills, no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. His grief responses are healthy and appropriate. Monica's voice was carefully controlled, but the previous evaluation suggested, "What previous evaluation?" Dr. Roberts asked. Alan's medical records show no cognitive assessments since Shaney's death. Who conducted this evaluation? The room was getting uncomfortable. Monica was fumbling through her papers. Dr. Peterson mentioned concerns. "I spoke with Dr. Peterson yesterday," Dr. Roberts interrupted. "He never diagnosed Alan with any cognitive issues. Someone provided false information to his office." That's when I decided to speak up. "Dr. Roberts," I said, "could you clarify something for our guests? In your professional opinion, would someone with my cognitive test results be capable of understanding complex financial discussions?" "Absolutely. Your scores indicate above-average mental acuity." "What about language comprehension? Could someone with my test results follow conversations in foreign languages they'd previously learned?" Dr. Roberts looked puzzled, but answered professionally. "Certainly. Language skills, especially those developed through professional use, would remain intact." I turned to Monica and spoke in perfect Mandarin. "Should I translate what you've been saying about me for the past 20 minutes? The Chinese couples gasped. Monica's face went white. Her mother covered her mouth with her hand. I continued in Mandarin, addressing Mrs. Chen directly. "Monica told you I'm confused and dying soon. She said Americans struggle with aging parents. She's been using our language to mock me and my own family." Mrs. Chen stared at Monica in horror. "You speak Chinese?" 30 years as a medical interpreter at Phoenix General Hospital," I said, pulling out my employment records. "I've helped hundreds of Chinese families communicate with their doctors." Monica was backpedaling frantically. "I never said those things. He's confused." I pulled out my phone and played the recording from 5 minutes earlier. Monica's voice filled the room, speaking in Mandarin about protecting me from my own confusion and Americans struggling with aging parents. "Mr. Chen stood up abruptly. "Monica, we trusted you. You told us this man needed our community's support." "You lied to us," Mrs. Chen added, her voice sharp. "We came here thinking we were helping an elderly man with dementia." Pastor Williams looked stunned. "Monica, what exactly is going on here?" Richard was staring at his wife. "Monica, you told me Dad was having episodes. You said Dr. Peterson diagnosed him with early dementia." I reached into my gift bag and pulled out a stack of bank statements. "These might clarify things," I said, handing them to Richard. "Monica's been withdrawing $2,800 monthly from my accounts for dementia care services. Services I've never received." Richard's hands were shaking as he read. "Dad, this shows $16,800 in withdrawals to something called Taylor Care Management." "Taylor is Monica's maiden name," I said quietly. The room erupted. Monica's sister Claire was backing away from her. The Chinese couples were gathering their things, clearly disgusted. Pastor Williams was reading the bank statements with growing alarm. Monica made one final desperate play, speaking rapidly in Mandarin to her parents. "He's lying about everything. The old man is crazy. Don't listen to him." I responded in the same language. "Monica, everyone in this room now knows I understand every word you're saying." Her father, who'd been silent all afternoon, finally spoke, in English. "Monica, we raised you better than this." That's when Monica completely lost control. "You all don't understand," she screamed in English. "I've been taking care of him for months. I deserve compensation for my time." "From the Children's College Fund?" Richard asked quietly. "The children don't need that money right now." "But you needed a house in Tempe?" I asked. Monica's eyes widened. She'd never mentioned the house to anyone else. I played another recording, her phone conversation about buying property with the stolen inheritance money. Richard stood up slowly. "Get out," he said to his wife. "Get out of this house right now." Monica looked around the room for support and found none. Even her own family was avoiding eye contact. As she gathered her purse, I spoke once more in Mandarin. 30 years of interpreting taught me that lies sound the same in every language. The Chinese couples nodded approval. Mrs. Chen patted my shoulder as Monica fled to her car. The intervention had backfired spectacularly. Monica's reputation in the community was destroyed. Her marriage was imploding, and her financial crimes were now public knowledge. But I wasn't finished yet. The legal confrontation happened exactly where Monica had planned it. James Mitchell's law office on November 12th, 2024. She'd scheduled the meeting weeks earlier to finalize my incapacity proceedings and transfer power of attorney. The irony was perfect. Mitchell and Associates occupied a sleek building in downtown Phoenix, all glass and steel. The conference room had a mahogany table that seated 12 people, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley, and a recording system that documented everything. Monica arrived with her attorney, Patricia Hawkins, a sharp woman in an expensive suit who specialized in elder law. They'd brought a briefcase full of documents, medical reports, financial assessments, and the power of attorney papers that would give Monica complete control over my assets. "This is really just a formality," Attorney Hawkins told the room. "Mr. Johnson's cognitive decline has been well documented. We're here to ensure his financial affairs are properly managed." Richard sat across from them, still reeling from the intervention disaster. He'd brought his own lawyer, David Wilson, who looked skeptical about the entire proceedings. I sat at the head of the table with James Mitchell, who'd been Shanny's attorney for 20 years. He knew the real story. "Before we begin," Mitchell said, "I should mention that Mr. Johnson has requested Dr. Susan Roberts join us to discuss his recent medical evaluation." Monica's attorney frowned. "What medical evaluation? Our documentation shows Mr. Johnson hasn't been cooperative with medical professionals." "Actually," Dr. Roberts said, entering the conference room, "Alan has been extremely cooperative. We've conducted extensive testing over the past 3 weeks." She placed a thick folder on the table. "Comprehensive neurological assessment, cognitive function test, brain imaging, psychological evaluation. Mr. Johnson's mental faculties are completely intact." Attorney Hawkins was flipping through Monica's medical documents. "But these reports indicate significant cognitive decline, memory loss, inability to manage finances." "Where did those reports come from?" Dr. Roberts asked. Monica spoke up quickly. "Dr. Peterson at Family Medical Associates?" Dr. Roberts pulled out her phone. "Let me call Dr. Peterson right now." She dialed and put the call on speaker. Dr. Peterson's voice filled the conference room. "Dr. Peterson, this is Susan Roberts at Phoenix General. I'm sitting with Alan Johnson and his family. Can you clarify the cognitive assessment you performed on Mr. Johnson?" "I never performed any cognitive assessment on Alan Johnson," Dr. Peterson said clearly. "Someone called my office claiming he was having memory issues, but I recommended they schedule an appointment for proper evaluation. That appointment was never made." Monica's face was turning red. "But the medical reports—" "Dr. Peterson," Dr. Roberts continued, "did you ever diagnose Mr. Johnson with dementia or cognitive decline?" "Absolutely not. I've never even examined him for cognitive issues." Attorney Hawkins was staring at her client. "Monica, where did these medical documents come from?" Before Monica could answer, I spoke up. "May I address the question of my mental competency?" I stood and walked to the head of the table. For 30 years, I worked as a certified medical interpreter at Phoenix General Hospital. My job required me to translate complex medical procedures, treatment plans, and diagnostic information between English and 4 Chinese dialects. I placed my employment records on the table. These documents show continuous high-level cognitive work until my retirement in March 2024. Performance evaluations consistently rated my translation accuracy and medical comprehension as exemplary. Attorney Hawkins was reading the employment file. "You're a medical interpreter?" "Certified in Mandarin, Cantonese, Taiwanese, and Shanghainese. I hold advanced certificates in medical terminology translation and cultural competency training." I turned to Monica. "Which brings us to an interesting question. Monica, would you like to explain to everyone what you've been saying about me in Mandarin for the past 6 months?" Monica's attorney looked confused. "What does language have to do with this proceeding?" "Everything," I said, pulling out my Sony recorder. "Monica has been conducting a systematic campaign of elder abuse, using Chinese languages to conceal her activities. She assumed I couldn't understand her conversations." I played the first recording, Monica telling her Chinese relatives that I was worthless and dying soon. Attorney Hawkins went pale. "Monica, what is this?" "He's manipulating the recordings," Monica said desperately. I played the second recording, Monica describing her plan to steal the inheritance money while I sat at the same table. Richard was staring at his wife in horror. "Monica, you actually said these things." "I can provide translations," I offered, "but I think the intent is clear." James Mitchell opened his briefcase. As Shaney Johnson's estate attorney, I feel obligated to share something relevant. He pulled out Shaney's will. Mrs. Johnson was very specific about protecting the children's inheritance. She included a clause specifically excluding Monica from any trustee role. He read aloud. Under no circumstances should Monica Taylor have access to these funds or serve as trustee for the children's education accounts. Monica's attorney was frantically reviewing her notes. Monica, you told me the wife never anticipated this cognitive decline situation. Shaney anticipated it perfectly, I said. She saw this coming months before she died. I placed the bank statements on the table. Monica has withdrawn $16,800 from my accounts using fraudulent medical documentation. The money went to a company called Taylor Care Management LLC, which doesn't actually provide any services. Attorney Hawkins was reading the bank records. Monica, explain these withdrawals. I was caring for him. I deserve compensation. For what care? I asked. I live independently. I drive myself to appointments. I manage my own medication. What exactly were you doing that required $2,800 monthly? Dr. Roberts spoke up. According to my evaluation, Mr. Johnson requires no assisted care whatsoever. He's physically and mentally capable of independent living. Monica was cornered. She tried one last desperate move, speaking rapidly in Mandarin to her parents, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner. This is all lies, she said in Mandarin. The old American is trying to steal money from his own grandchildren. Don't believe his fake evidence. I responded immediately in the same language. Monica, everyone in this room now knows that you're the thief. Her attorney stood up. Mr. Johnson, did you just speak Chinese? Mandarin specifically. Would you like me to translate what Monica just said? I provided the translation. Monica's parents looked mortified. Her father stood up and walked out of the conference room without a word. Attorney Hawkins was packing her briefcase. Monica, I can no longer represent you in this matter. You've provided false documentation and misrepresented the facts of this case. Monica was now completely alone at the conference table. Her lawyer was leaving, her parents had abandoned her, and Richard was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. There's more, I said quietly. I pulled out a manila envelope. Monica, do you remember your conversation last week about the house in Tempe? Her eyes widened. I played another recording. Monica discussing using the stolen inheritance money as a down payment on a $450,000 house. Her voice was crystal clear, describing how she'd already put in an offer using money that belonged to my grandchildren. James Mitchell was taking notes rapidly. Mr. Johnson, are you saying Mrs. Taylor has been using stolen funds for personal real estate investments? The Tempe house purchase was scheduled to close next Friday, I said. Monica planned to use my late wife's life insurance money as the down payment. Richard finally found his voice. Monica, is this true? Are you buying a house with the kids' college money? Monica looked around the room desperately. Richard, you don't understand. We need a bigger house. The kids need more space. The kids need college educations, Richard said quietly. Dr. Roberts leaned forward. Mr. Johnson, in your professional opinion as a medical interpreter, how would you characterize Monica's use of language barriers to conceal financial crimes? In 30 years of hospital work, I've seen family members exploit language differences to manipulate medical decisions, but I've never seen someone weaponize language barriers to commit systematic elder abuse. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, a printed email exchange between Monica and a real estate agent, discussing the timeline for accessing inheritance funds. Monica sent these emails while sitting in my living room, pretending to care for my supposed dementia symptoms. James Mitchell was reviewing all the documentation. Mr. Johnson, this appears to be a clear case of financial elder abuse, fraud, and possibly identity theft. The medical documentation has been falsified, the power of attorney was obtained through deception, and substantial funds have been misappropriated. Monica made one last attempt at damage control. Alan's still grieving, she said to the room. He's not thinking clearly about family finances. I stood up slowly. Monica, my wife died 6 months ago. My grief is real. But grief doesn't make me stupid, and it doesn't make me blind to theft. I looked directly at her. Shaney warned me about you before she died. She said you looked at our family like a business opportunity. I should have listened to her sooner. Monica's composure finally cracked completely. You all don't understand what I've sacrificed, she screamed. I've been taking care of an old man who barely appreciates anything I do. What care? Richard asked, his voice deadly quiet. I drive him to appointments. I drive myself, I said. I handle his medications. I manage my own medication schedule. I cook for him. You've brought takeout 3 times in 6 months. Monica was grasping at straws. I was protecting the family finances. By stealing them? Richard asked. Attorney Wilson, Richard's lawyer, spoke for the first time. James, what are our options here? Mitchell was already drafting documents. Criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud. Civil recovery of all misappropriated funds. Restraining order preventing any further access to Mr. Johnson's accounts. And immediate revocation of any power of attorney claims. He looked at Monica. Mrs. Taylor, I'm legally obligated to report suspected elder abuse to the authorities. This evidence will be submitted to the district attorney's office tomorrow morning. Monica was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and frustration at being caught. This isn't over, she said, gathering her purse. Actually, I said quietly, it is over. Completely over. I pulled out one final recording device, a newer model I'd been carrying for the past week. Monica, this entire conversation has been recorded, including your admissions of theft, your attempts to blame my grief for your crimes, and your threat just now. The room was silent except for Monica's breathing. 30 years of medical interpreting taught me something important, I said. The truth doesn't change languages. Lies don't become honest just because you think no one understands them. And family betrayal cuts just as deep in Mandarin as it does in English. Monica walked out of the conference room without another word. Richard sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, he looked at me. Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have seen what was happening. Son, I said, Monica fooled everyone except your mother. Shani saw through her completely. Dr. Roberts was packing her files. Alan, for what it's worth, your cognitive function is remarkable. Most people half your age couldn't have managed this kind of systematic documentation while dealing with grief. James Mitchell was already on his phone with the district attorney's office. The wheels of justice were turning, but the most satisfying moment came 3 hours later, when Monica called Richard's phone in a panic. The real estate agent is asking questions about the down payment, she said. The bank is freezing the accounts. What do I do? Richard looked at me, then answered his wife. You call a criminal defense attorney, and you pray that Dad doesn't press charges. But I was absolutely pressing charges, because Shani deserved justice, and my grandchildren deserved their future back. The criminal charges were filed within 48 hours. Detective Maria Santos from the Phoenix Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit took my statement on November 14th, reviewing all the evidence I'd methodically collected over 6 months. Mr. Johnson, she said, this is one of the most thoroughly documented elder abuse cases I've ever seen. The audio recordings, bank statements, falsified medical documents, you've basically built the entire case for us. The charges were serious. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, identity theft, and forgery. Arizona takes financial crimes against seniors very seriously, with enhanced penalties that could mean 3 to 5 years in prison. Monica's arraignment was scheduled for November 20th. She hired criminal defense attorney Robert Castellanos, who immediately tried to plea bargain. My client was operating under the genuine belief that Mr. Johnson needed financial assistance, Castellanos argued to District Attorney Jennifer Walsh. She was acting as an unpaid caregiver for a grieving widower. D.A. Walsh reviewed my evidence file and laughed. Counselor, your client was recorded in multiple languages describing her systematic theft of inheritance, money meant for children's education. She falsified medical records and forged power of attorney documents. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's organized financial crime. The preliminary hearing was devastating for Monica's defense. Judge Patricia Coleman reviewed the audio evidence, medical testimony, and financial records. Mrs. Taylor, Judge Coleman said, you exploited language barriers to conceal systematic elder abuse. You falsified medical documentation to justify financial theft. You targeted a grieving widower and stole money specifically designated for children's education. Monica's plea for reduced charges was denied, but the criminal case was just the beginning. James Mitchell filed a civil lawsuit for recovery of stolen funds, plus damages, legal fees, and punitive awards. The financial audit revealed the full scope of Monica's theft: $23,400 in unauthorized withdrawals, $8,500 in falsified care management fees, and $15,000 in attempted real estate fraud. Total damages, $46,900, not including legal costs. Monica's nursing license was suspended pending investigation by the Arizona State Board of Nursing. Her employer, Desert Medical Center, terminated her immediately after learning about the fraud charges. The house in Tempe fell through when the bank discovered the down payment came from potentially stolen funds. Monica lost her $5,000 earnest money deposit, but the most decisive blow came from an unexpected source, the Chinese Cultural Association. Mrs. Chen, who'd attended the disastrous family intervention, wrote a detailed letter to the court describing Monica's deception of their community. Mrs. Bowie, Taylor deliberately misrepresented Mr. Johnson's condition to gain our sympathy and support, she wrote. She used our cultural trust to validate her lies about his mental capacity. This abuse of our community's goodwill is unconscionable. The letter was signed by 12 families who'd been manipulated by Monica's false narrative. Monica's sentencing hearing was held on January 8, 2025. I was asked to provide a victim impact statement. Your Honor, I said, Monica didn't just steal money from my family. She weaponized my grief, exploited cultural differences, and attempted to destroy my reputation as a competent adult. She tried to institutionalize me to cover her crimes. I paused, looking directly at Monica. But most importantly, she betrayed my late wife's final wishes. Shaney specifically protected that inheritance money because she knew this day would come. Judge Coleman was not sympathetic to Monica's tearful apology. Mrs. Taylor, you conducted a sophisticated, premeditated campaign of financial abuse against a vulnerable senior citizen. You falsified medical records, forged legal documents, and exploited language barriers to conceal your crimes. The sentence was harsh but fair. 3 years in state prison, 5 years probation, full restitution of $46,900 plus legal fees, and permanent prohibition from serving as a caregiver or financial representative for any elderly person. Monica was also ordered to pay $15,000 in punitive damages and complete 200 hours of community service specifically working with elder abuse victims. The civil judgment was equally decisive. Monica's assets were frozen, her bank accounts emptied to pay restitution, and liens placed on any future earnings. Richard filed for divorce the day after sentencing. He requested full custody of James and Emma, citing Monica's criminal conviction and financial fraud as evidence of unfitness as a parent. Dad, Richard told me after the hearing, I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. The way she controlled your medical appointments, isolated you from decisions, spoke Chinese when you were in the room. Son, manipulative people are experts at appearing helpful while they're being harmful. Monica spent months building a narrative of my incompetence. Even I started doubting myself sometimes. The inheritance money was restored to its proper trust accounts for the grandchildren. Shaney's wishes were finally being honored, but perhaps the most satisfying outcome was personal. Dr. Roberts included my case in a presentation about elder abuse awareness at the Arizona Medical Association conference. Mr. Johnson's methodical documentation and linguistic skills allowed him to expose financial crimes that might otherwise have gone undetected, she told an audience of 200 healthcare providers. His case demonstrates that grief and age do not equal incompetence. Monica learned the most expensive lesson of her life. Respect isn't optional, and theft always has consequences. Justice was served in multiple languages. The ripple effects of Monica's conviction spread far beyond our family. Her story became a cautionary tale that touched every corner of her life. Desert Medical Center, where Monica had worked as a licensed practical nurse for 6 years, launched an internal investigation. They discovered she'd been falsifying overtime records and inflating patient care hours for additional compensation. The hospital fired 3 supervisors who'd failed to catch the discrepancies. We're implementing new oversight protocols specifically because of the Taylor case, Hospital Administrator Sarah Martinez announced at a staff meeting. Financial misconduct toward patients' families will result in immediate termination and criminal referral. Monica's nursing license wasn't just suspended. It was permanently revoked by the Arizona State Board of Nursing. The board's decision was unanimous and scathing. Mrs. Baby Taylor violated the fundamental principles of nursing ethics by exploiting a vulnerable family member for financial gain. Board Chair Dr. Linda Foster stated in the official ruling, she will never be eligible for license reinstatement in Arizona. The decision was reported to the National Nursing Database, effectively ending Monica's healthcare career nationwide. The Chinese Cultural Association held an emergency meeting to address how they'd been manipulated. Mrs. Chen, now serving as the group's elder protection advocate, developed new protocols for verifying family situations before offering community support. Monica Taylor taught us that we must independently verify claims about elderly community members, Mrs. Chen explained to the Arizona Republic reporter covering the story. We can't allow our cultural values of family respect to be weaponized by criminals. The association created the Allen Johnson Elder Protection Fund to help other seniors document and report financial abuse. The fund raised $12,000 in its first month. Monica's parents, Linda and Robert, were devastated by their daughter's conviction. They sold their Flagstaff home and moved to Oregon to escape the shame and media attention. We raised her to respect elders and help family, Linda told Detective Santos during a final interview. We don't understand how she became someone who could steal from Children's Education Fund. Robert was more direct. Monica's been cut off completely. We won't have a daughter who preys on grieving widowers. Monica's sister Claire changed her last name and moved to Colorado with her family. She sent me a handwritten apology letter that arrived 3 weeks after the sentencing. Mr. Johnson, I should have spoken up sooner when I heard Monica insulting you in Chinese. I was afraid of family conflict, but my silence enabled her crimes. I'm sorry for failing you when you needed an ally. The divorce proceedings were swift and decisive. Richard was granted full custody of James and Emma, with Monica receiving supervised visitation rights only after completing psychological counseling and anger management. The family court judge, Shani Williams, was particularly harsh during the custody hearing. Mrs. Taylor, you systematically defrauded your children's grandfather and stole money specifically intended for their education. This court cannot trust you with any financial responsibility toward these children. Monica's visitation was limited to 2 hours monthly, supervised by a court-appointed social worker, and she was prohibited from discussing finances or grandfather-related topics with the children. Richard sold the family home and moved into a modest apartment closer to my neighborhood. The kids and I need a fresh start, he explained. Everything in that house reminded us of Monica's lies. James and Emma, now 9 and 11, struggled with understanding why their mother was in prison. Richard and I decided on honesty appropriate for their ages. Mom made very bad choices about money that didn't belong to her, Richard explained. She hurt Grandpa and broke the law. She's facing consequences for those choices. Emma asked me directly, Grandpa, why didn't you tell us you could speak Chinese? I didn't think it mattered, I said, but it turned out to be important when someone was saying mean things about our family. The Children's College Fund, now safely protected, had grown back to $342,000 through restitution and interest. Shani's final wishes were secure. Monica's former colleagues at Desert Medical Center ostracized her completely. 3 nurses who'd considered her a friend testified against her during the licensing revocation hearing. We trusted Monica with our patients' families, testified Nurse Supervisor Janet Rodriguez. She violated everything we believe about healthcare ethics. The local news coverage was extensive and damaging. Channel 12's investigative report, Elder Abuse Hidden in Plain Sight, featured interviews with Dr. Roberts, Detective Santos, and Mrs. Chen about recognizing financial exploitation warning signs. Monica's mugshot and conviction details were permanently archived in online databases, making future employment nearly impossible. 6 months after sentencing, I received a letter from Monica in prison. She was requesting my support for early parole consideration. Mr. Johnson, I know I made mistakes, but 3 years seems excessive for what was essentially a family misunderstanding. Could you write a letter supporting my early release? I didn't respond. Some people never understand that theft isn't a misunderstanding, and consequences aren't negotiable. Shani would have been proud that justice was finally served, and her grandchildren's future was protected. The case became mandatory reading at the Arizona Attorney General's Elder Protection Task Force training program. Monica's name became synonymous with financial elder abuse in legal circles throughout the state. Her choices destroyed her career, her marriage, her family relationships, and her freedom. But my grandchildren's college fund was safe, and that's what mattered most. Today, 18 months after Monica's conviction, my life has found a new rhythm. Not the same as when Shani was alive, that life is gone forever, but something peaceful and purposeful. Richard and I have rebuilt our relationship on honest ground. Every Sunday, he brings James and Emma over for dinner. We cook together, talk about school, and sometimes I help them with Mandarin pronunciation. They're both taking Chinese language classes now, not because they have to, but because they want to understand their multicultural heritage. "Grandpa," James said last weekend, "will you teach us some medical words in Chinese for when we're doctors?" I'm teaching them both languages and medical terminology. Emma wants to be a pediatric nurse. James is leaning toward becoming a translator like his grandfather. Dr. Roberts asked me to speak at medical conferences about recognizing elder abuse. I've given presentations to hospital staff, nursing schools, and community groups about the warning signs of financial exploitation. Your case demonstrates that competent adults can be targeted simply because grief makes them appear vulnerable, I tell audiences. Age and sadness don't equal stupidity, and family members aren't automatically trustworthy. The presentations have led to policy changes at 3 Phoenix hospitals regarding family financial access and language interpretation protocols. I've established new boundaries that protect both my independence and my family relationships. Richard helps with major financial decisions, but I maintain complete control over my accounts. Mrs. Patterson checks on me twice weekly, but I live independently in the house Shani and I shared for 30 years. The grief counseling Dr. Roberts recommended has helped me separate normal mourning from the trauma of Monica's betrayal. I miss Shani every day, but I'm no longer consumed by loss. Monica was released after serving 18 months with good behavior. She moved to Nevada, where she works at a convenience store and lives in a studio apartment. Her parole officer confirmed she's prohibited from contact with elderly clients in any professional capacity. Richard received 1 letter from her requesting visitation with the children. He didn't respond. The inheritance money continues growing in protected education trusts. By the time James and Emma reach college age, there will be enough for graduate school if they choose. Shani's final wishes are secure. If you've experienced financial manipulation from family members, document everything and seek help immediately. Trust your instincts about people who exploit your vulnerable moments. And remember, grief doesn't make you helpless. Sometimes it makes you stronger than you ever imagined possible. Share your stories about standing up for elderly family members in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late.